We are back on the Rational Boomer podcast. Got a good show today. I did the show by myself yesterday doing a live Substack, and I hated doing that. It's when I'm talking for an hour straight. I don't know how you people feel, but I'm bored as fuck when I'm doing it. So I'm grateful to see the guest we have on. She's been on frequently. She's a great guest, Kristen from California. From the younger set, that's always good to hear from younger folks instead of old people all the time. So, Kristen, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me back. And thank you so much to everyone for being here today.
How has it been going out in California? I'm in the Midwest. We hear from people like TJ who's in Pennsylvania. How are things going out in California now with all the issues that you have to deal with out there?
Well, I live near the beach, and one thing that we're dealing with right now is a toxic algae bloom that is making sea life ill and is also making sea lions and seals very aggressive. So
Wow.
this toxic algae bloom comes naturally every couple of years, and it seems as though some years it will be worse than others, and then it dies off. And this particular year, because of the fires that we had, it has really fueled this algae bloom, and we're seeing, unfortunately, um, mammals are ingesting the fish that have been exposed to this. So there's like this horrible chain of events that's happening where smaller fish are eating it, and then they're being eaten by the predators, the bigger mammals, and then those mammals are getting very ill and then washing ashore. And then they also have a big program where they are rehabilitating the animals. If they can get the seals or the sea lions into rehabilitation before they get too sick, they can be healed and they can be returned to their habitat. So there's a big effort here to get as many of these injured and ill mammals off of the beach, and it's also a hazard because they've been attacking surfers.
Wow. Wow. Um, how about politically speaking? You got Gavin Newsom there, and there was some talk that he might be a presidential candidate. Then the podcast came about, and we don't know. What are things like politically in California? Clearly, you're a blue state.
Yeah, so Gavin Newsom, I think, alienated a lot of the base here in California with his podcast and things that he said over the last couple of months. Another big issue that has been sort of it became political, and I'm not exactly sure how, are the Menendez brothers that they are
Yeah.
going to be getting resentenced. And the new city attorney was really against this. The previous city attorney had thought that they should have been released, that they had been in jail for long enough. But it's funny enough that that's turned into like some political hotbed issue. Now, there's still a process for them to get released, but they are actually eligible, where prior to the resentencing, they weren't eligible for any kind of parole. So they still will
Right.
need to go through the process, but it looks like the Menendez brothers probably will get out of jail in the next, probably within a year.
Wow. Then you have to, in past years when somebody spent a lot of time in jail, say, what the hell am I going to do? Nobody's going to hire me. I'm not only a felon, but I'm a high profile felon. What the hell can I do? They don't have that problem. All they have to do is fucking start a podcast. They'll be rich within a few months.
I had that same thought of they're going to get out and they are just going to have so much money and fame thrown at them. Um, it will be interesting to see how they respond because they've just been in prison for so long. And if you're familiar with Gypsy, she
Yeah.
was incarcerated, yes, and she has had her stumbles since she got out of prison. So it will be interesting to see what happens to him. But it was like definitely like a hot topic here in Los Angeles over the last couple of weeks and months. Um, I think also politically here is what comes after Gavin Newsom, right? So there has been a lot of talk of Katie Porter running for governor,
Right.
and then also Kamala Harris. I don't know if there is too much truth to that. That is absolutely a rumor. I think the Katie Porter is much more likely, but there is a lot of talk about whether or not these fundraisers that Kamala has been having are the precursor to her running for governor.
Yeah, that could be. Katie Porter would be a good governor. It disappointed me with the whole Adam Schiff, Katie Porter thing running for that Senate seat, knowing that one of them would be without a job. And of course, Adam Schiff is more wired in to the establishment Democrats. So Porter was left holding the bag. And it's a tragedy that a woman of that stature and that ability isn't in government now. So I hope she does find a way back.
I think Katie Porter entered that race too soon. I think she should have stayed in her district because the Orange County is typically very red. And when she was elected to her seat in Orange County, which is just south of Los Angeles, that whole area flipped blue.
Right.
And she was part of that movement, and all of those seats were flipping blue. And I just felt like it was a little bit premature that she decided to run for that Senate seat. And what people need to understand about Adam Schiff is his congressional seat was where the major Hollywood studios are. That was his congressional seat for many years before he became a senator. So not only was he an establishment Democrat, and because of the impeachments in the last Trump administration, really a household name, he had major backing behind him, major money that Katie Porter just could not compete with, the kind of money that the Hollywood studios have to put into his campaign.
Yeah, absolutely. I was going to, now that we're on the topic, um, we of course will talk about the tariffs today. But there's a time when the tariffs came into play for Hollywood, when Donald Trump pulled out of his ass, well, we're going to put 100% tariffs on movies produced outside the country. Now, there's a lot of movies produced outside the country because it's less expensive. Uh, when he said that, it sounded like people were kind of flipping out in Hollywood, but I'm not in Hollywood. So, what was your perception of that?
All right, so if this is anyone's first time watching Rational Boomer and you've seen me as a guest for the first time, you might not be aware that prior to doing what I do now, I was a television producer for many years. I live in Los Angeles, and um, so many movies are filmed in Canada. I cannot even tell you the percentage, but it is a very, very high percentage of films that are filmed in Canada, and also TV shows. So, and then sometimes you might film part of the show or part of the movie in Los Angeles in a studio, filming the interior, but the exterior is shot in Vancouver. That's a huge spot for filming out of the country. When he did that, I felt like it was, him getting back at Hollywood and also getting back at Canada. For me, it was very
Right.
much specifically directed at Canada, not just, foreign films, but Canada, because it was right after Mark Carney had been here.
Right.
And so the British Columbia and the Vancouver Film Board, like I said, that they're very, very powerful, and they give a lot of benefits to filmmakers to film there. So that's one of the reasons why films do film exteriors and film different things in Vancouver, is because of credits and also location fees being reasonable, where it can be much more expensive to film in American cities. Um, I think we have to understand, and I've also talked about this, is this is your first time watching me. I worked in television. I was a reality television producer, and I also worked in film. And I became a holistic healer, and I do Reiki, and I work with people all over the world, really. Although Donald Trump has affected my international clientele, I will tell you.
I bet.
I looked at my books to see, because I was thinking, like, I haven't talked to that lady in Australia in a while. What happened to that woman in England? And I looked, and I had international clients up until mid-February, and I haven't had one since.
Wow.
Yeah.
Why would
Yeah.
that be?
Now, I'm not including Canadians. I've had Canadians, but I have not had the UK or Australian clients since mid-February, um, because they don't want to spend their money in America. They don't want to support
Yeah, I
Donald
got it.
Trump. Yeah. And I'm sure they will be back. And that's totally fine. I respect anyone's decision, but that was just what I felt because I've heard other people with small businesses say the same thing, that the international business changed after the inauguration. But I looked through my books. It was mid-February it did. But anyway, back to my point. So I do holistic healing now, and I'm very trauma informed and also very informed about personality disorders and about narcissism. So
You
when
could be
Donald
busy
Trump,
as hell working for the Republicans because there's a lot of personality disorders in those motherfuckers.
well, that's one of the reasons why I've come on the show and explained this. So if anyone wants to go back to my previous appearances on the show, I've talked about how pretty much everyone in a position of power in the federal government currently has a personality disorder. But specifically with a narcissistic personality disorder, when there's any type of injury to their ego, right? Or if they feel slighted in any way, especially on a big stage, right? The world stage, they lash out. And so a lot of these tariffs are his temper tantrums. And
Right.
we had talked about this before, that we felt eventually he would cave or he would put a pause. I remember when you said it, you're like, he'll put a pause on him. And that's pretty much where we're at. He'll claim victory when he can, right? When he can, like what he did with the UK. But in
Right.
actuality, there was no victory there. He didn't, and this whole photo op that he just had in Qatar, what I want everybody to understand is he's all smoke and mirrors, right? So he learned this on The Apprentice, how to be smoke and mirrors. And so they have continued that to today.
Well, I just want to clarify for people in case there's been some rumors out there. You're a former reality show producer, and as far as I know, there's no validity to the rumors that you will be producing the Menendez brothers busting loose.
No,
No, we're
that
not
is
good.
a vicious rumor that I absolutely
I
deny.
started.
There is no truth to it whatsoever. Yes, but will I be interested and curious about what they do after they do get out of prison? Yes, I will be. But will I produce documentaries about them? No, no.
No, no. Well, we were talking about a malignant narcissist or just narcissist. There was a time when people used to say, narcissism is a fairly rare type syndrome for people. There aren't that many people with narcissistic behavior, but that seems to have exploded since Donald Trump came around. Because I meet a lot of people that show the symptoms of narcissism. And maybe it's a variation on narcissism or just sociopathic or whatever. But it's weird how many you talked about um, personality disabilities and the leaders in Donald Trump's cabinet. But it seems like it's bled over into real people because I run into them all the time.
I think in America, we have a very real problem with narcissistic personality disorders. It seems to be specific to America, where I don't see it being as widespread, the entitlement, the selfishness. And you're right, it is on a spectrum. There can be the extreme narcissist, like what we're seeing with Donald Trump, and then there is someone who just exhibits those types of traits, right?
Right,
So
right.
it also is a learned behavior, and it can also be like inherited, right? So we've heard a lot of stories about how Donald Trump's father acted and his mother. So it doesn't seem like he was raised in a nurturing, healthy environment.
No.
So you can become a narcissist if you've been exposed to enough narcissism and don't do your own personal self-development work. And there also is a spectrum of personality disorders. Now, I want to be really clear. If you have anxiety or if you suffer from depression, that is not a personality disorder, okay? No, that is a mental health issue. That is not the same, okay? So, a personality disorder, like when we're talking about narcissism, there are lots of different types of personality disorder. Antisocial personality disorder, like what you said, a sociopath or a psychopath, the clinical term for that is antisocial personality disorder. And then there are sadists. There are there are certain types of uh, people that like to hurt people. And I think we see that like with Christy Nome and
Yeah.
Marjorie Taylor Greene. That's a personality disorder as well. So there's different personality disorders, but I just want to make it clear: this is not anxiety, this is not depression, it's not PTSD. This is something that is a character flaw. Okay. And we saw that on display with Christy Nome in the hearings, right? You can see the character flaw. JFK has such a malignant narcissistic personality disorder that he thinks he is above swimming in toxic sewage. He thinks it won't hurt me, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So it takes a grandiose kind of megalomaniac to get in toxic sewage that says do not swim and think you're going to take pictures and brag about that.
I think narcissism, based on my experience and people I've known that have narcissism, you quickly realize that as much as they act completely the opposite way, these people are horribly insecure. And this is just a protective action, a protective mode for them that they employ, not necessarily that they're saddled with. This is the way they react to being insecure and not wanting to be called out. Now, I grew up with a father who was immensely narcissistic. He wasn't physically violent per se, but he would say and do things and yell and scream and say things to his kids that you don't say. I mean, calling kids, worthless tax off
Mm.
animals. And I always said to myself, I said, when I have kids, I will never do that. And I never really realized how bad my father was until I became a father. And I said, now I gotta make sure I don't do the things he's done. And then I realized quickly, I would never fucking do that. That's nuts. And then I
Yeah.
realized, how bad it was. Um, but I think these people are immensely insecure, and this is why they react so badly when you finally corner them. Donald Trump starting to experience it. Kristi Noem is, Kash Patel. They're all getting cornered in Congress or in the media, and they don't know what to do. So they just start talking about anything else, talking in circles. And it's kind of interesting to watch them because you can see the wheels turning and they don't know what the fuck to do.
Yeah, and these people are power hungry as well, right?
Yeah.
So remember, Hillary Clinton said he was thin skinned. Yes, narcissists are very thin skinned. They will put on a very tough exterior, but that is not who they are. In some ways, they're just a toddler, a 4-year-old in an adult body. And the thing about Donald Trump and the Kristi Noem types and JD Vance and all the people who are, I mean, I can't even believe it sounds so insane, that are running this country, they, when challenged, double down, triple down, right? They keep going. And that's what we're witnessing with Donald Trump right now, right? They just want to keep going. And that's what makes it a personality disorder. That's what makes it psychopathic, is that they can't help themselves, right?
Right.
He needs the pomp and circumstance. He needs the military parade. It's never enough, right? And I think we're seeing that with Kristi Noem and the other minions around. It's never enough for them. Mike Johnson. My concern is, and and I think this is going to be something that we have to really, really be vigilant about and really call it out, is I really think they're going to start going after Democratic leaders. We saw that in Newark, and I think that is partly why the Democratic Party is paralyzed right now. I would not be surprised um, if we see them want to do more of that, right? So when Kash Patel and all these people were, before Donald Trump had been elected again, they were all on their social medias and everything saying that when he gets elected and we get back into power, we're going to arrest. And they had a whole list of people, right?
Yeah.
And they haven't arrested
Enemies
any of
list.
those people, right? They had their
Yeah.
enemies list. But I've been seeing over the last couple of days, um, they're like targeting James Comey. They think he should be arrested. And I'm sort of seeing the rumblings of this type of talk on social media. And so I'm really concerned about that, because we have these power hungry people who we just discussed have a personality disorder. They don't care about the Constitution, due process, anything like that. And um, I think also we're seeing it like with the judge that they just indicted in Wisconsin. Now, I just saw a legal analysis on that that case can't go anywhere. She had full legal authority to do what she did, and she's truly like above the law. Like, so I'm not sure where that will go, but
She
the
has
legal
some kind of
analysis that I'm
immunity.
seeing,
Yeah.
yes, is the legal analysis that I'm seeing says that basically in your courtroom
The
you
authority.
can
Yeah.
you call the shots. Yeah. So, but I just don't think it's going to stop. They're going to escalate this behavior. And like I said, I'm concerned about it, and we just need to be vigilant and really keep our eye open about it, because how they mobilized in Newark was very effective, and that will need to happen in whatever city if they want to, expand that.
But don't you think it's status quo with Donald Trump to push the envelope, then push a little farther until you go all out? And what we're seeing with them, with the ICE arresting the judge and then the mayor of Newark, the natural progression is to members of Congress. And I got to be
Mhm.
honest with you, if they arrest members of Congress, that's going to cause a lot of problems. I think even arresting the mayor of Newark is going to come back and slap them in the face. It's funny. Tom Homan keeps making threats to AOC, and AOC
Yeah.
keeps going, fucking bring it. I'm not afraid of you,
Hmm.
bitch. And this has
Yeah.
got to be driving Tom Homan nuts. He's got to be trying to find some way to nail her. But unfortunately for him, AOC is quite a bit smarter than he or Donald Trump is.
Yes, I agree with you, because really Trump is just a big bully. And when you stand up to them, they back down.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm saying about how we have to be vigilant, that if this happens in the city you live in and you are a protester type, you're going to need to mobilize quickly and get out there, because that was what was effective in Newark. And they mobilized very quickly. And on social media, they said like emergency mobilizing, time to go, go, go. I think they are going to want to push the envelope. And that's why I think they were talking about James Comey, because it's a level up, but he's not currently in power. So that's a way to test the boundaries of it. My concern is Mike Johnson said in a press conference that the arresting the mayor and arresting the Wisconsin judge was like just the beginning, that they were going to be arresting more and basically giving a warning to everybody. And so we're just in this territory, like I said, where we have to be really cognizant and vigilant, ready to get on the phone, ready to mobilize if it's happening in your city, because they want to use fear tactics as a way to control.
Yeah. Yeah, clearly that's what they're doing. And it is working on some people. I know I get a lot of comments, a lot of DMs from people that are just absolutely terrified. And I think that's the thing that makes me the most angry. It's one thing to threaten to do all of these things, but there are people that are in line to be in trouble, like if they cut Medicaid or whatever. There are people that are going to be affected dramatically. It may even cost them their health or their lives, and they are terrified. And that is what I'm most upset about with the Republicans, feeling free and confident to make people in this country terrified for no reason at all. It's just unbelievable to me.
I mean, this insanity could end tomorrow if Congress did their job. They could impeach him and remove him tomorrow. And then if
Yeah.
JD Vance decided he was going to get up to the same shenanigans, then you impeach or remove him too. And they are utter cowards. They are complicit in the downfall of our democracy. It is inexcusable. It is it literally is so mind-boggling that it is literal insanity that we're living through right now, and it is totally unnecessary, and it could end. And the Democrats are too weak and the Republicans are too corrupt.
Yeah.
And um, I I know that, and I have it too. A lot of my clients are really scared, and a lot of them have already had the real world consequences of this. So I have a client whose mother was a MASH nurse in Vietnam and has a lot of health issues. And the VA cut off all of her prescriptions, No
Oh, wow.
reason, nothing. Nothing they can do about it. The doctor can't do anything about it. He can issue the prescriptions again, but the VA is not going to fill them. And they scrambled to get a telemedicine appointment to get her, I mean, literally life saving medications that she needs. And
You,
so that's how we're treating a Vietnam veteran, okay, who literally, when we're talking about saving lives, those MASH nurses and those MASH doctors saved lives every day. And she was exposed to all kinds of stuff. Part of the reason why she has the health issues she has is because of the stuff, the poisons they sprayed.
right.
So I have a family member who was affected by the hurricanes in Florida. And because of that, the state of Florida in certain counties are broke. And because of Doge and the budget cuts, and now uh, I guess because of Medicaid and what's going to happen there, what's going to happen in Florida to seniors in the next couple of years is going to be utterly devastating if this continues. I'm seeing it right
Yeah.
now with my own family, and and right now it's only like a mild crisis. But as we get into next year and the year after, the widespread damage from the hurricanes is still there, and the social programs and the social nets and the housing situation is dire, and there's no money.
Now, you've told us before that some of your relatives, a number of your relatives, are MAGA idiots. Are some of those people that are suffering or struggling now in your family amongst those MAGA followers?
Um, no. So it's a
Oh,
different part of my family. My family, the ones that are so I grew up in a very conservative Republican family. And the majority of my family is MAGA, and they are the hardcore MAGA. And they have lost a lot of money in the stock market, but they've lost and been affected in a different way. But they are so entrenched in the cult of MAGA that they have such cognitive dissonance that they just don't see it. That's the best way. They just don't get it. They don't see it, even though they have lost money, even though their retirement and their savings and at their age, because there was like a whole thing going around, oh, they'll make the money back. That was all what MAGA was telling themselves, right? Oh, if you lost money in the stock market, just hang in there, you'll make it back. I heard idiots at the nail salon, their MAGA husbands telling them that as they literally just lost their retirement and their 401ks. Oh, we'll make it back, no big deal. It'll all make it back. Well, if you're 65 or 70 or 75, you might not have a chance to make it back. it your
exactly.
life your life requires that money now to live, and you now have a certain amount of money you thought you were going to have to live, and now that amount has changed. That's going to affect your lifestyle.
Yeah, the only reason I haven't worried about it so much is because we do have some money invested and we've lost some money over it. And I'm 65, so to wait till it comes back, I'm beyond the waiting stage. I'm old enough to need it now. Fortunately, that money was only intended to leave to my kids who are much younger. So they do have the time to get it back, and I don't need to get it back. But there are people living day to day on the interest or the income coming from
Yeah.
their investments. And if you have $1 million and now you have a $500,000, that dramatically affects your lifestyle. Or if you have $100,000, it doesn't matter. You have less money than you did before for no apparent reason.
And if this budget goes through, then the people who are relying on other programs, Medicare, Medicaid, SNAP, all of that, like they're, and like how I started off the program, I mean, they have cut everything. There is no EPA anymore that is going to address what's happening off the coast of California. California is going to have to deal with it themselves, right? Because the federal government isn't going to be coming in to help anything. And that's what I'm saying is when we're coming into next year and the year after, and there's no FEMA, they've cut Medicaid. The housing situation in areas that have been affected by climate change is dire. I mean, we are a train wreck of the most epic proportions in the happening right now. And the MAGA folks are only happy that federal employees have been let go. I mean, I can't even tell you how excited my MAGA family is that they let people go from their job. I mean,
Right.
it's truly gross. And they're, MAGA right now is on a high about Qatar and him being treated like the emperor with no clothes over there, and the big PR stunt that this just was. They're riding high that, look at how our king's being treated. They don't care or know what's happening on Capitol Hill right now, that the lowest income Americans are about to get slapped with a tax burden that will absolutely decimate their financial life.
Yeah. I think a lot of people, I've heard people say, oh, he's doing so well in Saudi Arabia. What has he done for the country or the world? All he does is fill his pockets. He goes into Saudi Arabia, he bows and scrapes to the crown prince. And let's remember who Saudi Arabia is. The vast majority of the pilots on 9/11 were Saudi Arabian. Osama bin Laden was born in Saudi Arabia. The crown prince was responsible for the murder and dismemberment of an American journalist. And Donald Trump said he didn't do it, so he must not have done it. These people are the enemies of this country. And it's not just Donald Trump. Previous presidents have thought of them as friends. They aren't friends. They've never been friends. And the only possible reason these people, these presidents, have been catering to them is strictly because of money, because that's all they have right now. They aren't good people. And I'm not talking about the people of Saudi Arabia. I'm talking about the people who run Saudi Arabia.
Yes, how we have forgotten that Saudi Arabia is basically responsible for 9/11, that almost all of the 9/11 hijackers were from
Yep.
Saudi Arabia, and that Qatar funds different
Hamas.
terrorist groups around the world. And this is why, and this conversation completely went away. At one point, we were having the conversation about stopping our oil dependence so that we didn't have to deal with them after 9/11. Remember, we were having that
Right.
conversation about having clean energy, having our own renewable resources that we utilize here in America so that we are not dependent on foreign oil. And um, the the Saudi Arabian way of life, in terms of that hierarchy, they treat women terribly.
Oh,
Okay.
absolutely.
They treat Women are treated like property in most of the Middle East. Not all, but most of the Middle East. And so for me, this is highly offensive to embrace that culture. I was annoyed when Barack Obama did it too. And it's also, it's just show. They actually realized how to treat a narcissist and how to get what you want, right?
Oh, yeah.
By putting on the big show. They knew how to do it, right? And they worked it. Now, there was a big Boeing deal, I guess, that has come out of this, right? So there's going to be, Boeing is made in 2 states, I believe. So part of, I guess, the deal that he struck was that Qatar is going to be buying planes from Boeing, and they are made in Washington State, and I believe it's South Carolina. If I'm wrong, you can correct me in the comments. But that is a huge score for MAGA in South Carolina, right? Huge. That will probably get Lindsey Graham reelected. So they look at it that it's the art of the deal, and that he went over there and he, had art of the deal.
Well, that's interesting if it would have been new business. I question whether it's new business because the plane that they want to give Donald Trump is a fucking Boeing. Clearly, they've done business with them before. So they
Yeah.
announced this deal that probably would have happened anyways if it was not already planned. Like you say, it's all performative. Something happens good, and Donald Trump wants to take credit for it. Somebody probably mentioned to him in passing. He says, "Sure, that looks good for me. I'll say that." It's kind of like with the Chinese thing. He claims to have cut a deal with China. Ain't no deal. It's a
Yeah.
pause. There's been no negotiations or anything like that. And the pause, while it's helpful, it doesn't fix anything. It doesn't fix the problem that Donald Trump created. So they want to hang their hat on all these wins. This plane, for me, it's just a distraction. It's absolutely ridiculous. Donald Trump doesn't care about the plane. He just wants it announced that these people like me enough where they're going to give me a plane. Hey, aren't I a great guy? And when they start talking about the emoluments violation and giving it to Donald Trump, and they said, "Oh no, we're not giving it to Donald Trump. We're giving it to the Air Force." I'm trying to imagine why the largest Air Force in the world needs a used luxury passenger plane. I mean, we spend billions and billions of dollars on fighters. If we want to go to Boeing and say, just make us a plane, it's not that big a deal. And this plane, and then they said, well, we'll use it as Air Force One. No, you're not. I mean, it's going to cost a couple $100 million just to fucking bring it up to date and renovate it. Because what people don't understand is some people think, well, Qatar's going to give them a brand new plane. No, bitch, it's not a brand new plane. It's a used plane that the royalty doesn't want anymore. It's his sloppy seconds, is what it is. And the other thing I heard recently was that same plane was offered to Turkey, and Turkey said, yeah, no, we don't need that. So, how big a deal is it?
It's like going to take so much money and so much time to rehab that plane to make it usable that they could probably just build a whole new plane. It's like the same bird brain idea of getting Alcatraz going again. Yes, Turkey didn't want that plane because it needs extensive work. But when you're a narcissist and someone is schmoozing you and they give you a gift, the narcissist will fall for it every time. And he thinks he's special. They made him feel special. And so, guaranteed, they got the better end of the deal without any doubt. There is no art of the deal, it's all a facade. None of it is real. There was a clip going around where Barbara Walters really called him out during an interview where he was like, "Oh, everyone thinks I'm the greatest and I'm making the greatest deal." And she goes, "No, they don't." It was like, oh, it was brilliant. It's going around on social media. And it was just, or actually, she said, no, they didn't to him, but she actually came back at him. But he has been the same slimy, narcissistic guy lying about his accomplishments since forever, right? That's always been who he is. He did the same thing after the prime minister of the UK came over and they were like, oh, we have this new tariff deal with the UK. It was the same thing. It was a total fugazi. That deal was already done. There was no big art of the deal that he had done. And you're probably right about Boeing. They were probably already going to purchase those planes, but they got to make the big announcement when he's there so that he can take credit for it, because that's what narcissists do. They take credit for other people's work.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I look at Donald Trump getting this plane from Qatar. It's akin to that thing we hear on the radio all the time, cars for kids. Give us your junk cars and we'll try to turn it into money. Except this is for planes for poopy pants. And Donald Trump's taking the junk plane and acting like it's something. I don't know that he'll ever get that plane. It doesn't matter. It'll sit wherever, and he's trying to say it's going to the Air Force. Yeah, but I'm going to take it with me to the library when I leave. That doesn't sound like an Air Force owned, because when you're president, you don't get to take Air Force property with you.
He doesn't plan on leaving.
Well, he's going to leave one way or another.
Okay. None of them plan on leaving. Okay. They think
Yeah.
they're going to pass it down to Don Jr. and then pass it down to Barron. They don't plan on leaving. He thinks they're going to rehab that plane and that he'll have it when Don Jr. takes over, or Don Jr. They think it's just going to be all in the family.
Well, that's an interesting and creative way to look at it, but I think the way things are going, um, Don Jr. is going to have trouble getting a fucking job, because by the time this is all said and done and this country struggles the way it's going to struggle, Donald Trump will ultimately become a pariah, and anybody tied to him is going to have the stink of Donald Trump on him. I mean, this whole thing with China, he paused the tariffs, but that doesn't mean the boats are starting up again. I mean, there is no deal. I mean, why would they start things up? I think China is out to make a point with Donald Trump. They know that they got him over a barrel, and they're not going to let them loose. That's what Donald Trump counts on. Well, I won't be so mean now. I'll pull it back, and then you can just go back to normal. I don't think China's going to do that. I think they want to inflict some pain, not so much on the people, but so that Donald Trump feels it.
You know, Donald Trump doesn't plan anything. He does everything off the
No,
cuff. Everything is reactionary depending on his ego. And China does everything methodically and planned.
yeah,
They plan their economy, their infrastructure, everything years, decades in advance. And he's not going to outsmart them.
no,
No,
he
no,
can't outsmart anybody. He can't
no,
outsmart anybody. You said something
no.
earlier that this whole thing could be over tomorrow if not for Congress. And when you say Congress, you mean the Republican Party. Now, I've
Mm-hmm.
said this for months, years. I've said, there's going to come a point when Donald Trump is more of a liability to the Republican Party than he is an asset. And they're going to have to kick him to the curb. Otherwise, they're going to get destroyed in the midterms or in 2028. There's going to come that point where they're going to have to kick him to the curb. Now, never in my wildest dreams did I think we'd be at this point, this far down the road, with this much shit happening, and still the Republicans unwilling to do what they know they're going to have to do ultimately.
It is staggering the level of corruption, the level of cowardness. I'm sure there's a lot going on behind the scenes we're unaware of. There has to be. But the fact that they're not reining him in any way, shape, or form, and with Mike Johnson at the speaker, there will be no reining in because he won't bring anything to the floor that would rein him in.
Yeah.
Um, and you know how I feel about having free and fair elections. They don't plan on having free and fair elections. Republicans are not scared of their constituents because they plan on cheating
Yeah.
and they don't plan on leaving office. They don't care about their constituents. They are so immoral and un-American, and they want to get rid of the Constitution. Steve Bannon's been saying that for years, that when they got in there, they were doing away with it immediately.
Yeah. 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 It's pretty amazing. These people who hung their hats on the Constitution are now have plans to decimate it. It's ridiculous. Um, People always talk about the free and fair elections, and they're worried that we won't have any more elections. It's one thing to fix a presidential election. I think that can be done. I think we've seen it done. Um, but to do that with all the elections, the representatives, the senators, the legislators, that's not such an easy task. And if we get a House of Representatives and maybe a Senate that is majority Democrat, Donald Trump can't do much at that time because now we're going to start seeing investigations and hearings and all kinds of stuff. And then Donald Trump will have to revert to his old role as the victim.
I think you're right. It's harder on local levels. And we just saw in Omaha, Nebraska, the
Right.
Republican mayor outed. And I believe it is a Black Democratic man who is the new
Right.
mayor of Omaha. So, yes, on local elections, and that's why it's so important. If anyone in this audience has ever thought about running for office, I highly encourage you to really explore that. Even if it is on the school board and locally, please, if you are considering running for office, we need good, sane, rational people who believe in democracy and in due process to run for office. Okay, so Congress right now has the pain hasn't been inflicted enough for there
Right.
to be any real action. And everybody in charge is part of the cult, so they're all just going along with it. In 2 years, if we do have elections, this we don't have 2 years. If we
No.
continue down the road we are in, the we will be in a dire straits in 2 years. Red states are going to, the red states. I like I said, I'm seeing this with a relative that I'm dealing with in a red that I'm helping. I shouldn't say dealing with, that I'm helping in a red state right now navigate some really difficult life journey, and red states don't have legislation or bodies of legislators that want to help the constituents, right? They make laws like trans kids can't play sports and they ban pride flags and stuff like that, but they don't actually make laws that help their states. So red states in 2 years are going to be in dire straits. Blue states, like where I am in California, we have a good income stream here. We will, for the most part, be okay.
Yeah.
In 2 years, by the time we get to the midterms, if nothing has been done to slow or stop this, it's we're going to be in such a bad place, and we cannot count on even the people who have been very, very severely hurt by MAGA uh, ideology. We can't even count them to vote in their best interest. West Virginia is a good example. Okay, they are the poorest state. They have the worst education, um, and they continue to vote for Republicans who continue to cause the economic hardships that they are under.
I was going to
And
ask you about that. How bad does it have to be before these people wake up? And what you're saying is that for some people, there is no bottom. No matter how
yeah,
bad it gets, they would never vote for a libtard because Republican all the way, even
yeah,
though the Republicans have taken away your medical care, taken away your money, taken away your jobs, they'll still fight for those people. It's,
yeah.
you know what it sounds like? It sounds like the relationship between a pimp and a prostitute. No matter how badly you're treated, you're still out there working hard for them. That's 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 mentally not normal.
You know, the Democrats are a very weak opposition party. The
Yeah, oh yeah,
Republicans were a very effective oppositional party to the
right.
point where they became the ruling party because they were so effective being the oppositional party. Republicans are even winning the message even now in mainstream media. They are not talking about what's really going on in this budget. They are not talking about what's really going to be cut from Medicaid, from Medicare, from SNAP, and what's going to happen to people in lower tax brackets that they are literally going to pay a majority of their wages to the federal government in taxes every year, destroying them financially. They are focusing on Democrats are trying to get gang members out of jail. Democrats don't want us um, to deport gang members. Democrats are supporting gang members. Democrats are so they are still winning the messaging in a lot of ways, especially on mainstream media, because Democrats don't have a story. They haven't weaved the "we are the people" narrative effectively. If they did, they would be able to cross over some of these hardcore "I'll never vote for a libtard" people in Kentucky who are dirt poor but still continue to vote for Republicans and vote against their best interest. But the Democrats don't have a story. They don't have a narrative. The Republicans had one, and that's Democrats are useless. Democrats are terrible. Do nothing Democrats. And it worked. It
Yeah,
worked.
it did work.
And until we see Democrats create some sort of narrative, some sort of storytelling, and you can see my background. I come from reality TV. What does reality TV do very well? We tell a story. We weave a story that draws people in. And Democrats have been totally ineffective in doing that. If they told a "we the people" story, that we are for we the people, not we the corporations, not we the billionaires, not we the elite, they could win over so many Americans by selling that American dream of we the people. But they're so ineffective, they can't even get that together. I mean, after what happened in Newark, you would have thought they would have had an emergency meeting, right?
Yeah.
Emergency caucus. Crickets.
Yeah. And I just heard there was some, maybe it was Denver or something that had a 90-second loss of communications too. This is going to happen in other parts of the country with regards to airports, and there's going to be tragedies, unfortunately, because of it. And it goes back to who our transportation director is. And I saw um,
Doge created
Duffy.
problems so that
Yeah.
Elon Musk could come in and save them, right? So we've talked about this before when I was telling everybody when I've been on the show before that Doge is not about saving money or doing anything efficiently. It is about taking control, about Elon taking control of the federal government so that he can steal as much money as he can, steal as much data as he can to feed his AI programs because AI needs a ton of data to work. And so part of what they're doing, this is just what I'm observing. So I want to say that this is just my hypothesis is part of what's happening in Newark and with the air traffic control in Denver is the big balls and the Doge guys went in there and meddled with the air traffic control and God knows what malware, viruses, or problems, communication systems issues that they created internally. And then also, then they can say, and Republicans love to do this, they want to create the problem so then they can say, look, here's the problem, and we need to do away with it, right? So now Elon can come in and say, well, the FAA air traffic control systems don't work. We're going to need to use Starlink.
Yeah. Well, Sean Duffy, who is a former reality TV star, who's now the
Yep.
transportation director, sat in front of Congress the other day, and they asked him specifically, you offered buyouts to air traffic controllers, which are important people and important to the safety of anybody that flies in a plane. Um, you offered buyouts. How many people took them? Because that's kind of important as to how many air traffic controllers we still have. And he either couldn't or wouldn't answer that. So it could be one, it could be 1,000, it could be more than that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And what's going on with air traffic at this point smacks of some serious deficiencies that we've not seen before. The whole
Yeah.
problem in Newark, and then we're seeing it
Mm-hmm.
in other parts of the country, and it's going to spread fast. It's going to be a problem for everybody. Some places will be able to hold on a little longer, but if you try to tear down a system like the FAA, it's going to trickle down and have some serious problems.
This is what I was saying. In 2 years, if we're waiting around for 2 years thinking the midterms are going to solve all problems, we no. We have a major problem right now in Newark, and you have to understand Trump hates Newark. This is
Yeah.
not a coincidence that this is happening in Newark. He hates Newark. He hates the minorities in Newark. He is definitely targeting Newark. Okay, so last week on a shift of three air traffic controllers in Newark, they were controlling 1,500 flights, three of them.
Wow. That's
Now,
crazy.
that Duffy was on the Real World in either the late 90s or early 2000s, and he was a jerk then. And
Yeah,
his
he's a
wife was on
dipshit.
the Real World, and she's on Fox News, and she is an absolute bigot. There was a cast member who had AIDS, and she completely shunned him, and he ended up dying of AIDS on the show. And he was an activist, and he was very well known in Miami for his AIDS activism. And he was this gorgeous man, full of life, just like a wonderful person. And she could not open her heart to him. She could not have empathy. That Sean Duffy's wife showed who she was and who they are years ago. He also showed when they had that first collision in DC with the helicopter and the commercial airliner. When he got on national TV with the whole press conference and blamed DEI and Joe Biden and blamed all of this, I knew what we were in for with him. What we were in for it is scary. I know for myself, I'm going to be thinking twice before I get on a plane right now, and I will not be flying into Newark.
Definitely not flying into Newark, but we don't know where the next hotspot will be. It could crop up anywhere. And getting on a plane is a little more concerning than it once was. I'm not getting on a plane for a while because my daughter-in-law is having a baby toward the end of the month, and we got to be there in case our granddaughter needs to be covered when they have to rush off to the hospital. So we're going to be hanging out here for a while, but we like to fly, and I'm not scared of flying. But you have to think twice about it with the way things are going and who's running the system, and it's fucked up at this point. We were talking about the budget, and that's a big concerning thing to everybody right now because they want to cut Medicaid. Um, when I look at what's going on now in DC, I think the Democrats have been doing something good. They're exposing what is in that budget, what that budget is about. Um, and there are Republicans now kind of gone, yeah, I don't want to do that. If I sign on to that, it's political suicide. I'm not concerned about that budget being passed. I don't know that it can pass the House. I don't think it will. It will definitely not pass the Senate. So there'll have to be some alterations to it, some fixes to it. Uh, but I was listening in a hearing today, and it was funny because these reps were tearing into these Trump officials, and they were talking about, cutting Medicaid, and they're saying, well, we want to cut the waste off of it. We want to get people who shouldn't be getting it, the fraudulent folks, off of it. And one rep said, well, you said there's about 1 million people that may be using Medicaid fraudulently. He says, that's right. Well, then how come what you're doing is going to kick off 13.5 million people? I mean, what the fuck is going on there? How is that possible? And then when they tried to explain why they were cutting Medicaid, now remember they said, we're not cutting Medicaid. They insisted they weren't cutting Medicaid, even when um, the first version of what the bill might be. We didn't say anything about Medicaid in there. They did, but it was under the radar. Now they're talking about it, and they're owning up to it. And I heard one rep talking to an official, and they said, why are you cutting Medicaid? And they said, because we want to strengthen Medicaid and we want it to build back and be stronger as it goes off in the future. And the rep asked the perfect question. He said, okay, please explain to me how by making those cuts on Medicaid and then giving that money to the wealthy in tax cuts, how does that strengthen Medicaid? You're still taking the money away from them. If there is, in fact, fraud in Medicaid, you're just transferring that fraudulent money to another fraud, which is the fucking oligarchs in this country. And they don't seem to have an answer for that. They can't explain that. They're trying to explain away things, and people who don't listen might buy into it. But it's absolute garbage. It's bullshit.
RFK Jr. wasn't even aware of some of the budget cuts.
I know.
Chris Murphy was asking him about budget cuts that were going to affect vaccinations in Connecticut, and he didn't even know.
Right.
He didn't even know.
Well,
I think a lot of it is happening at the Doge level, right? When those guys went in there, they wreaked all kinds of havoc and cut off all kinds of things that can't be put back. That's what I was saying about my client's mom who can't get her prescriptions from the VA. What Doge did was make it impossible for them to reconnect her back into getting her prescriptions delivered on time.
right.
And so
But
they've done probably stuff on lots of different levels in the FAA, in Medicaid. And so they're, the full extent of what they've done. And Republicans don't even know what's in their own bill or what it even entails. I saw a couple of them stammering and stuttering on the talk shows because they didn't even know.
yeah. Well, in fact, they think there are things in the bill that aren't in the bill. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I've heard Trumplafucks come out and say the Democrats are voting against no tax on tips, no tax on overtime, no tax on
That's not
Social
even in
Security.
there.
Not even in the bill. This is
No.
what they promised you, and they
Mm-hmm.
didn't even have the decency to put it in the bill because they knew you were too stupid to fucking look into it. And clearly they are because they're running around telling me, oh, what do you have against no tax on tips? I'll tell you what I do for fucking tips. Whenever my wife and I went out to dinner today and we pay with a debit card or a credit card or something, I always leave the tip in cash. They can do
Cash.
with
Yeah.
it what they want to do it, but I'm not
Yeah.
going to be complicit with the government for taking money away from them when they're getting paid virtually nothing anyway.
Yeah. Um, I I pray to God this form of this bill does not pass because it's just, especially the tax part. When I watched a video this morning on YouTube with a woman explaining the tax burden that lower income folks would be burdening and incrementally increasing over the next couple of years. I mean, it will literally kill millions of people. They won't be
Yeah.
able to eat. They won't be able to live. They won't have health insurance. And that is by design. That's what they want. That is the most horrific part of all of this is that yes, they're stupid, yes, they're incompetent, but they also are cruel
Mhm.
and they want to hurt people that are not like them. And I even saw, now this is really cray. So on, I think it was Daily Mail, but it showed up on Blue Sky feed. Um, they're like offering courses on how to get yourself out of Trump derangement syndrome, like it's a real thing. And like Democrats actually need to go to some sort of AA type thing to relieve themselves of Trump derangement syndrome, and they're saying that it's going to be like taught in universities as like a real thing. Oh, it's like
Well,
it's we live in the
here's
upside
the
down.
thing.
Like it's so stupid. I'm just so angry because that's so stupid. Ah.
But this is what they do. They always turn it back on you. You know, they're tired of
Mhm,
being heard that they're in a cult.
mhm.
So what they're doing now is, no, you're in a cult.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
everything's reactionary. It's like Donald Trump, and I notice this every time somebody calls him out on something. He was in a meeting and they were talking about the tariffs and all the deals that he was going to cut, yet he hadn't cut a deal at that point. He hadn't cut one deal. And so he got called out on it. And then 2 days later, magically, we had this deal with the UK. Now, what you have to understand about that deal with the UK, we didn't get anything. They only amount to about 3% of our trade. But the UK got some shit that they've been hoping to get for a long time. And Biden wouldn't give them those concessions because of Brexit or something like that. So Donald Trump basically gave them whatever they needed, really got nothing in return because they don't provide much to us, and called it a win. Every time something where he gets called out, he has to react. The China thing was another thing. We're on the precipice of calamity economically with what's going on in China. So he goes, "Oh, cut a deal with China." Well, what's the deal? Well, it's kind of a pause and we're still working on it. In fact, the UK deal, we don't even know what that deal is per se because they're still writing it. Donald Trump
Yeah.
jumps the gun constantly just to try to change the narrative. And if you're
Mhm.
stupid enough to believe it, well, then you're in a fucking cult.
Yes, and that is one of his tactics, right? That he's really good at, like, dangling the carrot or dangling the shiny thing. Look over here, and all of MAGA does, right?
Yeah.
Um, my concern is though, is that, like I said, they still are seem to perceivably be winning that messaging that he is creating these deals, that he is still the deal maker. They're still believing it, like buying it hook, line, and sinker, because I see it on social media. So, we're still in this place where we don't have the media voices we need, right? And then they really just tried to scare Hassan Piker. I don't know if people are familiar with that story, but we don't have the pro democracy, pro constitution media that we need. Because, like I said, in the mainstream media, and still what I'm seeing that's being amplified on social media is that he's out there making these deals. No, he's not. No, he's
Yeah.
not, and that he's still some deal maker and that it's all going to, turn out in the wash. And MAG is making like this huge deal. And there's, like I said, they're still winning this media messaging where, no president has been treated like this in Saudi Arabia. Well, we don't want a president to be treated like that in Saudi Arabia. They're not our
I
friend.
don't go there.
But,
Yeah.
right. So, but Hassan Piker he calls himself a pacifist. I would put him in the category of a progressive, right? And he's an American and he is a very large Twitch streamer, right? So he's on Twitch all day. He also has a YouTube channel and he's pro-Palestinian, and like they would probably call him a communist. Anyway, he was coming back from France and he got detained at the airport in Chicago. And are you familiar with this, Boomer?
I've heard the story. I don't know the guy.
Okay, so Hassan either in his late 20s or early
Got a lot of
30s.
followers. He's got
And he
millions of
has
followers.
millions and millions of views, and his Twitch streams have millions and millions of views. He calls himself a pacifist. So, like I said, way I would describe him to your audience is a progressive, right? And what he did, a lot of lawyers didn't think was a good idea because they detained him and started asking him about his political views and his views on Donald Trump, and he engaged with them. And I know like Hawk and a bunch of others were like, wrong, wrong, wrong. He shouldn't have engaged. But they did let him go, right? They only detained him for a few hours and then let him go. But this is all part of their scare tactic. And that's why those of us that are on the pro democracy side, we can't be scared and capitulate into keeping our voices muted, right?
No,
And
no.
that's one of the reasons why I come on the show, because we have to keep our voices out there and alive, and we have to let everybody know that we cannot be ruled by fear. I'm not sure how I feel. I feel like he felt at the time that he needed to tell them and explain who he was and what he believed, and that it obviously worked. So I'm not sure why all the lawyers are second guessing it, but I do think, you know, we need the pro democracy voices to be really strong. And so anyone who has a platform, I just tell you, please don't be afraid by this regime. They want fear tactics to keep us silent. And we have to get the messaging right. I just cannot stress that enough. We don't have the messaging right. And so thus we're just constantly playing defense. When the narcissist is controlling the narrative, which is what they want to do, they want to control the narrative with everybody, right? They want to be the one that's setting the stage. When they're controlling the narrative and we're constantly playing defense and catch up, it's just they just win over and over again. And that's what I don't like to see happening right now.
Well, I'm going to throw out a theory about messaging. And as somebody who was a producer of reality TV, I think you could probably relate to this and maybe straighten me out or offer something in addition to it. When we talk about messaging from the Democrats, it isn't the content, because we know that the Republicans put out lies. In this world, we are far less sophisticated than we were, say, in the 60s and 70s. People would just deliver news like Walter Cronkite, Huntley and Brinkley and people like that. They deliver the news. It wasn't entertaining at all, but people wanted it because they needed the news. We are at a time in this country where if you've got news to deliver, you better be fucking entertaining too. Otherwise,
Mm-hmm.
people are not going to pay attention to you. This is why
Mm-hmm.
Joe Rogan gets so much play as a news person. A self-proclaimed dumbass who doesn't really know anything, that does everything he does to try to get views and make money. But in this world, you've got to be a little more entertaining if you want to deliver the message. I used to give a lot of talks, okay, and I'd go up, I'd sit on the desk with all the other people, and they all had their boards and their information on their computers, and do all their stuff, and they look at me dressed like this and go, "Who is this dumb fuck?" Then I'd go up, and I wouldn't tell them as much information as they did, but I'd entertain them. I'd laugh, make them laugh, engage with them, or do something. And when it was all said and done, when people came up to us afterwards, they all came up to me. Not because I was so great. It was because all the rest were so fucking boring. And that's the thing. When we get somebody like Schumer up there saying, "Oh, this is bad," and we got to do, they don't want to hear that. This is why when uh, Gavin Newsom engages with that Trumplafuck, they don't want to see you trying to play nice and play appropriate. If Gavin Newsom sat to that clown next to that clown and tore into him, they'd fucking love him. So that's what I tell anybody. If you're going to go toward a Republican and you're a Democrat, you better be ready to fight, because that's what people want to see. And to them, that's entertaining and that's justification and that shows something. But I won't say we as Democrats, because I'm not a Democrat, but Democrats have to be more entertaining. And that's not even really the word. They have to be more energetic about what they say and how they say it. And they've got to be more aggressive in going after the Republicans. That's the only way you're going to get people to turn their heads. They want the tough guy, they want the leader.
I totally agree. They have to weave a story. Okay. The Republicans weaved the story of old man Joe Biden, and it worked. And we're not weaving the same story about Donald Trump. And they have to weave the story about the corruption and how it is totally anti-American, and weave the story about how the regime is not for everyday Americans, only for the rich class.
Right.
And with Aaron Parnas and different voices coming up and really getting the views and really coming into their own as content creators, it gives me hope. And you are really great at short form content, by the way. You
Thank you.
weave a story in your little reels, and you tell that story very effectively with the that entertainment quality that you're talking about, right? That sort of it factor of like, I want to hear what you have to say, right?
Right.
I'm interested, right? I want to hear. I know you're going to have an interesting take, and you have a good delivery. So yes, we need this. And Hassan is very good at that. He's very personable. He's very intelligent. He's good at creating the conversation. I don't agree with him on everything that he stands for, but I have a lot of respect for the platform that he's created. And so I think we have to just keep, these voices will keep coming into our, For You page. And so we have to support them, right? If someone's resonating with you as a content creator and telling that story and providing that entertainment value for you, like their video, right? Subscribe to their channel, support them. Because we need more of this. And like I said, that's why I come on the show to do what I can to help explain, like I said, the parts of the regime that I understand that are in my wheelhouse, of the reality TV aspect, that we have a reality TV president, and also understanding that we as a nation need so much healing, and the people who are in power have never done any healing on themselves and look at healing and empathy and self-awareness as negative attributes, right? And so thus their decision making and their policies all follow suit.
I'm not trying to be arrogant about this, and this wasn't intentional, but I'm fully aware why people follow me on TikTok and elsewhere. It's because I'm kind of a novelty. I'm a
Mm.
65-year-old man that says "fuck you," and it's more entertaining to see something you don't expect or somebody who's willing to fight for you. That's what people are looking for at this point in time. Um, is somebody who's going to fight for you. That's why they love Donald Trump. Because Donald
Yeah.
Trump says, I hate the government too. I'm going to go after him for you. Whether he's in meaning it or not, that's their only hope. And and for me doing it, fortunately, it's just my personality. It's no affectation. I'm not putting on a show. If you saw me in a restaurant, I'd say fuck Donald Trump. It would be the same thing. But people need somebody who can lead the charge, or at least believe they lead the charge. I know with people like me, they'll come to me and said, "You said exactly what I wanted to say, but I couldn't, or in the way I wanted to say, but I couldn't." When somebody comes out and just says what they're thinking and is hardcore about it, people become drawn to that. Now, the thing about it is, I'm 65. I don't look like Bradley Cooper. I'm not exceptionally talented, but I would hope some of the younger people would take a look at what I'm doing and doing it, because they will fucking explode if they do it too. Like Aaron Parnas. I love Aaron Parnas because he's very accurate and he gets a lot of information, but he's not a very animated guy. He's a good,
No, he's
solid
just
guy.
facts. Yeah, just facts.
Every once in a while, I see young people or a young woman, like Political Girl. She's good.
Hmm.
She's not young, but she's younger than me. But who isn't? Um, but I think that's what it needs to be. You need more personalities
Yeah.
delivering the information as opposed to just some one-dimensional person saying, "Oh, this is bad because of this."
Hmm.
This is a world we need to entertain motherfuckers. They need
Yeah,
to be
and
entertained and deliver the news
absolutely.
while you're entertaining them.
Absolutely. You know, there's time for the highbrow if you want to watch Lawrence on MSNBC, right? And then there also is the little bite-sized little commentary that you give that's raw and real and authentic, and both have their place and value.
Right,
I
right.
always tell people, I would say, I'm on this podcast and Boomer gets it. And he's one of the boomers that does get it. You should check out the podcast because it's a breath of fresh air that there's a boomer who freaking gets it. Because most of us, unfortunately, have boomer parents that are MAGA or don't get it at all. And they're even that is sort of like cultural meme about how boomers don't get it. But you are a boomer that does get it. And so I understand what you're saying about that being a novelty, but it's also really important to have all of these voices, like for young people that have lost their parents to MAGA, your voice is really important. That was one of the reasons
Absolutely.
why when I first found your channel, I think it was through Arlene Unfiltered, is how I'd seen a video of hers that someone had posted on YouTube from TikTok, and then you showed up on my feed when she was a guest of yours, and it was refreshing because you are raw and you are authentic, and like I said, a lot of us lost our dad to MAGA, and we cannot talk to him, we can't relate to him, we don't have the
Yeah.
same views as him, and you provide that energy of like, oh my god, a boomer that gets it, yes.
Well, and I get that too because I am a boomer. I know a lot of boomers because I went to school with boomers. I have friends that are boomers. And millennials are absolutely right. You know, boomers are a large percentage of boomers are dipshits. And there are many friends of mine that I've known for all my life, and I won't even talk to them right now. Not because I hate them, but because we had such good times when we were young. I don't want to ruin those memories by telling them they're dumb
Mm.
fucks now. So I'm better off just staying away from them. I heard somebody tell a joke. This will be good for a millennial. Anytime a boomer says millennials are dumb, all you have to do is say, yeah, that comes from the crowd of people that put linoleum over fucking wood floors.
Yeah, yeah, gosh. And the, I think, you know, the way that we consume our media is changing. And the Republicans beat us to that punch. They
Yeah.
had the streamers, they had the podcasters, they have those personalities. What you're talking about, they have a plethora of the Ben Shapiro and Laura Loomer. They are all characters, right? And they grift millions of dollars from their subscribers, and some of them get paid like, what's that one? He wears the beanie. He's bald. He was getting paid to make pro-Trump videos from Russia and getting like millions of views before the election. Tim Pool, that's who it is. Tim Pool.
Yeah. Yeah.
So they've had these cast of characters on their side, grifting, spreading propaganda, spreading lies. I mean, even Steve Bannon. And they don't have to be good looking. I mean, Steve Bannon is not good looking, but he is one of the characters and he is entertaining. And so I totally understand what you're saying about needing that personality, and we need the rise of that, but they're trying to squelch that by detaining Hassan Piker. That's my point in sort of wrapping this part of our conversation up, is by doing that to that generation. I think he's more, is he millennial or Gen?
Who's that?
I'm trying to think how old Hassan Piker is. I guess he's a millennial. He could be a Gen Zer, but I think he's more just a young millennial because I feel like he's in his late 20s, but I'm not exactly sure how old he is. But the point of detaining Hassan and letting everyone in that age bracket know that we can detain you and put fear in you is trying to deter those Democratic voices from coming up. That was why they did that.
I just Googled that shit. Hassan Piker is 33 years old, so he's
Okay,
fully
all right, so he's
ensconced
millennial.
into the millennial. Yeah,
Yes, okay,
he's a
he's really
millennial.
okay. Okay, good. I wasn't sure how old he was. Okay, thank you for clarifying. So, but you see what I mean? They were trying to put the fear in that generation for not having a voice against the regime.
Yeah. Yeah, you know, people will come to me and you know, with all this going on with detainments and stuff like that, they'll say, Mike, you better be careful. They'll be coming after you. First of all, I'm not big enough for them to care. Second of all, I'm a 65-year-old white guy who was born and raised in America. Come get me, motherfucker. Because you know what'll happen? You come get me, my platform will fucking explode. I'll
Yeah,
deal with a little
totally.
detention, and then I'll have more power after that. So please come and get me.
Well, I had people ask me that because when I told people I was coming on the podcast and I was going to be a regular guest, they're like, "Are you sure? What are you doing?" And I thought, and told this to a very concerned friend. Um, my parents are MAGA. They belong to
Yeah.
the country clubs. They live in a Trump country club. Okay, they live there. So I'm just going to be deemed the troubled daughter in California. They're not going to care about me. Okay.
No.
My parents are in the in crowd. They do not care about the troubled daughter in California. That's what I would be labeled, and they would just disregard me. So no, I'm not concerned about that they because I understand narcissism so well, and you do too. They want us to be scared. That's their whole tactic. Without your fear, they
Yeah.
have no power. And I just refuse. I have been abused by narcissists my whole life. I was raised by narcissists too. I'm done. I've dated them. I've had them as friends. I've had them as bosses. I've worked for them. I'm done. I'm not going to let a narcissist instill fear in me and control me in that way anymore. No.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've learned over the years, you can either continue to be oppressed by narcissists or you can fight back. And you'll be happily surprised that when you fight back, everything changes. I grew up with a father who was a narcissist. And from the time I was a little kid, I was terrified of him because of his yelling and screaming and threats and all this other stuff. Uh, and, uh, and then when I got to be about 16, 17, I was a little bigger. I was an athlete, so I was in better shape and stronger than him. I feel a little, I was at that stage in my life where I had far more testosterone than I had intelligence. So I said, fuck you. Let's go, bitch. And then, of course, whether he could have beat me up or not, he wasn't going to do it. He was terrified that somebody would push back. And you know what happened after that? The time I lived there with him, and he wasn't always around. After that point, after doing that, he would always talk shit about me, not to me, to my mom, and have my mom relay it to me. And I'd always say, Mom, tell him to fucking come talk to me. Come talk to me and we'll straighten this shit out. But he was a coward and he didn't want to do it. And that taught me a very important lesson. When somebody's really in your face and really talking strong and making threats, that's a weak motherfucker. So take advantage
Yeah.
of it.
Yeah. Definitely.
He's um, I think we've all had to deal with narcissists at one point or another. And it's one thing to deal with it in your life, that's tough enough. But when we have an entire country run by a narcissist, um,
Mhm.
growing up with one, I realize there's two things that happen when you're led by a narcissist. You either grow up to be timid and scared and full of anxiety, or you end up being a fighting motherfucker. I'm not taking this
Yeah.
anymore. My brother and I both were in that situation. We dealt with a
Hmm.
narcissist. We could have been
Hmm.
timid little wimps, scared of everything, but the opposite has happened because we found out. We found out the secret to dealing with a narcissist, and that's by slapping the fucking taste out of their mouth.
Yes, I've always been feisty too, and feisty, feisty is not what narcissists like. Because feisty people they can't control, and I was a rebel and marched to the beat of my own drummer my whole life, and it is sometimes like a moment where I have to like pinch myself, Boomer, where I'm like, there is a narcissist controlling like 360 million people. Like, please God, make it stop. How could this be? How could someone like for me, every time I see him now, all I see is the emperor with no clothes. That's all I see.
Yeah.
It was like, when Mark Carney sat there next to him, the look on his face was just, he was like immersed in it. Like all of these people talking about this invisible cloak as the emperor is sitting next to me naked. That's all I could see from Mark Carney. And I feel like that. I have moments like that where I literally just want to pinch myself and say, how can someone so mentally be deranged be be running this country and no one is doing anything to stop him? I just, it boggles my mind, but it's unsustainable. It won't last. His health and his cognitive decline were even more staggering in his speeches over in the Middle East. I mean, the looks on his face that I see, like on cover of newspapers and in social media posts. His eyes are like all glassy. He doesn't even, he
Yeah.
like looks like all weird. He's not even like present in his body. His face was all droopy, like he was giving a speech over in the Middle East, and this one shot they had of his face, his like right side of his face was all droopy. He looked like melted. He wasn't even making sense what he was saying. Like, it's just all absolutely absurd. I literally just can't even believe we're here. But what I know deep inside my heart and soul is that it won't last. It's not sustainable. And one way or another, we will get out of this mess.
Once he goes over the cliff, then people will start piling on. Even his friends will start piling on. I've said this before, and maybe people think I'm arrogant for saying this, but I guarantee you, if you put me in a room with Donald Trump and I got to question him the way I wanted to question him without any restrictions, I know I could break him because I've done it with, put it this way, my father was a malignant narcissist, not as powerful as Donald Trump, but a ton smarter. My dad was shrewd about shit. So when you were dealing with that narcissism, you had to be smart too, but they were breakable. Donald Trump, I watch him in these interviews and he gets a hard question. Like when they were talking about, when he was being questioned about that picture of the MS-13 knuckles
Hmm.
that was
Hmm.
clearly photoshopped. When I saw Donald Trump talking about that, I wasn't sure if he was trying to push a lie or he just didn't know. Because I think the people around him don't tell him anything he doesn't want to hear. So he's literally ignorant of some of the information that's going around him because he isn't told what's going on. And even if he was told, he wouldn't want to hear it or he's not able to comprehend it.
Yeah, you're exactly right. They are lying to him. They told him, and specifically when I'm saying they, it's Stephen Miller, because he said Stephen Miller told him that the Supreme Court had ruled unanimously in his favor that he did not have to bring back Mr. Garcia. They are straight up lying to him because they need to keep him insulated so they can just have him docile so they can do what they want. Really, running things behind the scenes is Stephen Miller and a whole host of other shady characters, right? Peter Thiel, all the people that are really running things, but actually in the White House running things is that ghoul Stephen Miller. And I think you're right. I think they don't tell him what he doesn't want to hear. They insulate him from information to keep him docile and control him and just implement their Project 2025 agenda. But I think also he has short term memory loss.
Oh,
And
yeah,
I
no
have
question.
definitely seen some questions that have been asked to him, and it was very obvious he just didn't remember. So he's probably having a lot of short term memory loss, and you have to tell him things multiple times because he just can't retain the information.
I think you're right about Stephen Miller. He's running some things and he's not very old, he's not very experienced. And when I watch him talk, it's more than narcissism. This guy does appear to be mentally ill. I mean,
Oh, it's he has
Hitler-esque
antisocial
mentally
personality
ill. Yeah,
disorder. Yeah, so the highest echelon of a personality disorder, like a Ted Bundy, a psychopath, a sociopath, are terms that are used like to describe the behavior, typically like after the fact. But when someone is in the psychosis of the behavior, it's the clinical term is antisocial personality disorder.
right.
It appears as though Stephen Miller has that, and I think JD Vance does too.
I think JD Vance has some problems too. And
Yeah.
they're so oblivious too because as other people have said and I'll say too, this whole era of Donald Trump is going to end. It's
Yes.
definitely going to end. Donald
Hmm.
Trump will die. Donald Trump will be shamed. Donald Trump will be
Hmm.
impeached. Something will happen. It will be over. People like Stephen Miller, Steve Bannon, JD Vance, none of those motherfuckers have any immunity. We
No.
saw a lot of people go to jail after Watergate that weren't the president.
Hmm.
And there are definitely some crimes being committed from Stephen Miller down to Elon Musk. Those two better hope Donald Trump lives forever and stays president forever because the moment the Democrats get in, there's going to be investigations and indictments, and there's going to be no help for them at all. They are going to pay the price. I mean, I keep hearing people talking about having an American version of the Nuremberg trials,
Yeah, that's
and
what I
that
was
may
just going
sound
to say.
crazy,
Hmm.
but it's possible.
You just took the words right out of my mouth. I was literally going to say, I think we're going to see our own version of the Nuremberg trials. Those went on for 80 years, by the way. Christine Nome and all of them we have plenty of time to prosecute Marco Rubio and the whole lot of them, okay? Especially the ones that are committing the atrocities against human beings and the human rights violations. Christine Nome being number one. I mean, she has to be at The Hague. I mean, the civil rights and human rights violations that woman has committed. I always felt like when it came out in her book that she had shot that puppy, that was her resume. That was her job application for this job.
Yeah.
I always thought that at the time. And I know people thought I was crazy because I'm like, she did that on purpose. She wants him to know she's willing to do anything, that she has no morals and she has no problem executing, that she will do whatever he wants and without any question. And that was like her letting him know, like, I'll go there. I think that we we in this country have a history of not holding people accountable. It started with the Civil War. We did not hold the South and all of those generals accountable. We did not take care of it then. We did not fully take care of Watergate either. Roger Stone,
No.
example A, Roger Stone didn't go to jail, and look what havoc he wreaked years and years later. And then we had Merrick Garland. And I mean, Merrick Garland couldn't have been worse at his job in holding people accountable. And if we continue that pattern, we will not be able to get out of this. We will not rebound. We will continue to be the laughingstock of the world. All horrible things will happen to us. When this ends, and it will end, and it might be, it might be impeachment. It might be a health issue. Who knows? Like I said, I don't know. Something's going to happen, and we have to make sure we don't have a repeat of Merrick Garland and what happened at Watergate and what happened at the Civil War. We have to absolutely hold these people accountable and put laws in place so this cannot happen again.
I agree with you. After Watergate, I was in my teens at the time, and I paid attention to it because it was the top news story. But the whole reason for not or for pardoning uh, Richard Nixon was, well, we got to let the country heal. We've got to come back together. We've got to unite, and we go through that. It's going to tear the country apart. That may or may not have been true. I think in retrospect, that was the wrong move, and I think a lot of people understand that. But I think we're in a different situation this time around. If you want this country to heal, there is going to have to be accountability. There is going to have to be trials. There's going to have to be convictions, and there's going to have to be punishments. Because if we go through these last 10 years and nobody gets punished for anything, that changes the perception of this country, not only in this country, but around the world. I mean, we're a laughing
That's
stock
what I'm saying.
around
We're
the
the
world.
laughing stock. That's what I'm saying. We'll just continue to be. Yeah.
Yeah. We've got to get tough on this. And like you say,
Mm-hmm.
if you don't want this to happen again, we better shut these motherfuckers down. And you brought up Merrick Garland. Merrick Garland didn't break any laws, but he is complicit in what's happening today.
Oh,
It's
utter
funny to
failure.
me
An utter
that we
failure.
that we don't talk about Merrick Garland. He's got to come back up in the conversation because he is responsible. He literally is
Mm-hmm.
responsible for Donald Trump being president today. Far as I'm
Yes.
concerned, him and the media may be the most responsible for him being president. And there has to be accountability for it. I don't care if he's a respected jurist. I don't care if he's considered to be a solid guy. He was negligent in his job, and it's costing
Mm-hmm.
this country dearly. And there needs to be some accountability for that.
Yeah, he was a complete dereliction of duty. Um,
Yep.
he uh, he absolutely is responsible for why we're in this mess again. If he would have held Donald Trump and everyone accountable immediately and indicted members of Congress and all the conspirators immediately, we would not be here right now. Donald Trump would be at Fort Leavenworth where he belongs. Um, I hope that Merrick Garland never has a peaceful dinner at Ruth Chris Steakhouse as long as he lives. I hope
I
there are
agree.
protesters. I hope that he never enjoys a time out in public ever. I hope people jeer him. I mean, I say that and I'm like, oh, I don't wish ill on people, but there has to be some sort of reckoning. He's just gotten forgotten about, and he cannot get off just scot free for his just absolute negligence as Attorney General.
He can't retire in with a government pension and live a comfortable life.
That's what I'm
He
saying. And eat
fucked
his
over.
Ruth Chris dinner. No, no.
I got to tell
Mm-mm.
you, if I had occasion to see Mr. Merrick Garland, and I thought he was a good choice when he was first picked, little did I know that how negligent he would be. But if I was to see him, I'd ask him some hard questions, and I wouldn't be pleasant about it because I'm now worrying about my kids and my grandkids' future because of that motherfucker, and that pisses me off.
Yeah, I would probably get kicked out of Ruth with Chris if I saw him there because I'd probably walk right up to him. I would. And I would tell him that you owe this country the biggest apology. Look what you have done. Look what you have done. Your hesitancy, your negligence, your wanting to appear, apolitical, whatever legacy you thought you were protecting. Shame on you.
Yeah,
Shame on
absolutely.
you.
Absolutely. Well, I'm going to wrap up the Rational Boomer podcast. Uh, Kristen, it's an absolute pleasure to have you on anytime you want. Like I said, I did a show yesterday that was basically a live on Substack, and it was me talking for an hour. And I don't know about people watching it, but I was bored to fucking tears after I got done. I go, what did you just do? Why did you do that? Well, because I had
Oh,
to.
I'm glad that you're building your Substack though, but I get it. I used to make like, individual content and I don't anymore because I do not enjoy just talking by myself into the camera anymore. I don't like it. I feel like I don't know. I used to enjoy it, but I don't anymore. I totally get what you're saying, but I'm really glad that you have a presence on Substack.
Well, I spent all my life in radio, never went to TV because, well, my face. I just never was interested in, was with radio, I could come in my, dressed any way I wanted and looking any way I wanted, but I could sound cool. So that was all right. But then when I had to start going on camera on TikTok, I go, hey, I don't really like this. I have to be worried about not only what I'm saying and that I'm not drooling on myself or that I look stupid. And it is hard. I will say this for a minute and a half, 2 minutes, I can do it. When I got to do it for a full hour all by myself, oh, I don't like it. I just don't like it.
Yeah, it's a skill and you are good at it. So it is a skill. So, and yeah, even though you might not like it, you're doing a great job at it. I just want to let everybody know if you want to come say hi on Blue Sky. I'm on Blue Sky.
Please
I've
do.
been, yeah, I've been a little bit absent over the last couple of weeks because I've had all this family stuff I've been dealing with. But I'm on Blue Sky at Kristen Healer. Come say hi. And I just thank everyone for being here, for being part of this community, um, for just for everything that you do, Boomer, and for everybody in the audience. It's so important that, like I said, we support pro democracy, pro constitution voices. And I just can't thank you all enough for being here. Thank you so much.
Well, and one of the things I'm glad of, especially with Rational Boomer podcast, you said people were worried that, you hear from the Trump-lafux and stuff. That's the one thing about this podcast and even my TikToks, because I've been painstakingly blocking Trump-lafux. So 99% of the audience here on the Rational Boomer podcast are of a like mind.
Yeah.
You've been on here a number of times, and I'd be willing to bet you've run into very few, if any, people saying, "Oh, you're a bitch."
Oh, oh no, just there will always be a troll here and there, but for the most part, your community is absolutely wonderful. They send those trolls out. I've noticed like when Trump has like a bad day or a bad look, the trolls
Yeah,
come out. I don't know if you've noticed that. It's all
I have.
organized and very, very few of them are real. They're all bot farms in Ukraine and in St. Petersburg and in India. And so you can sort of see the pattern because I really noticed like after the election, they were all gone. They all hated Kamala and she was so awful and senile Joe Biden and all that. And then right after the election, boom, they were all gone. You never saw any of them again. So a lot of the
No,
trolls are not real. And one thing that the MAGAs have shown on your show, which I've called them out for before, is they like to come on and not even turn their camera on. That's what cowards they are. So they're not
yeah.
even a real good troll. They're a coward troll. I come on here, turn on the camera and say, this is who I am. This is my background. And they come on there and hide, don't turn on their camera. I mean, they're just absolute cowards even when they come on your show.
Well, you got to give them a little credit because you come on camera and you're an attractive young woman, and they're these moon-faced, toothless motherfuckers who'd
Sitting in
want to
their
see them
basement.
anyway.
Yeah, yeah. But I was found that very interesting that they talk a big game and they love the tough talk, but when it comes to turning on their camera and saying and showing who they are, nope, not going to do it.
Well, it's funny on the TikTok lives, TJ is kind of an instigator. He's a moderator on the TikToks, but he
Yeah.
also likes to, I don't know why he does this. He constantly goes into lives with MAGA just to fuck with them. And so he'll kind of try to incite some of the trolls that do show up.
Hmm.
And they say, you should go up there and talk to Mike. You should go up there and talk to Mike. And TJ goes, bring him up if he's there. And I go,
Yeah.
I don't always like talking to Trump fucks because I can get nowhere with them, but it's a little cathartic because I get to tear into them.
You
And
dunk
at the
on them.
moment,
Yeah.
it feels real good. It's kind of like a drug. It feels real good when I'm taking it, but when it's over, I feel kind of dirty. But none of them request to come on because
Hmm.
one person said, "Well, you're a professional at this. You'll make me look stupid." I just say, "Well, I don't have to be a professional to make you look stupid. I could
Yeah.
just
You
let
can
you
do that all
talk and
on
not
your
say a
own. You're
word."
going to do it.
Yeah.
Exactly. You'll do it all on your own. Uh-huh.
Abs- Well, I'm looking forward to the next time you come on. It's always a great pleasure to have you on and get some of your insights. Being that you're younger, you're a woman, and you're smart, so it always ends up being a great show. And as you know, in the comments on YouTube, there'll be a ton commenting about you, and I promise you, 99% of them will be positive. And if they're
Oh, thank
not,
you
you're
so
gonna
much.
fucking have to deal with me.
Oh my gosh. Thank you, Boomer. Thank you, everybody, for being here. Lots of love, everybody. Thank you.
All right, thank you. And for those of you listening, thanks for taking the time to do that. I hope you have a great day, and we'll talk to you again tomorrow.